The text came in late at night, lighting up my phone in the dark like a warning flare. Hey babe, I'm at my ex's house. Her dad just died suddenly this afternoon. The whole family is devastated. I know this is weird, but she called me crying and I couldn't say no. Don't be jealous. I'll be home late. I read it twice, then a third time. My boyfriend, his female ex, a dead father, and that line, don't be jealous, sitting there like a needle under my skin. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, forcing myself to stay calm. Death is serious. Grief is real. I didn't want to be the kind of woman who turns compassion into suspicion. So I replied carefully, choosing every word. My condolences to her family. Take your time. He sent back heart emojis almost immediately. This is why I love you. You're so understanding. I set my phone down, but the room felt heavier. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His shoes weren't by the door. His jacket wasn't draped over the chair like always. I told myself not to overthink it. Still, my chest felt tight. It wasn't the idea of him comforting a woman he once loved. I understood history. What I couldn't shake was that unnecessary reassurance. Don't be jealous. Why say it unless there was something to hide? I opened my laptop, typed her last name into the local obituaries. Nothing? I checked another site, then funeral homes, then social media. Her father's Facebook profile was public. Earlier that same day, he'd posted about his morning golf game. Alive, healthy, very much not dead. I didn't call my boyfriend. I didn't accuse him. Instead, I decided to be kind. If someone had truly passed away, the respectful thing was to acknowledge it. The next morning, I called a florist and ordered a sympathy arrangement. My voice didn't shake as I dictated the card. Deepest sympathies on your loss. I had the flowers delivered to her parents' house that afternoon. 2 hours later, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Call after call. Missed call after missed call. Then a voicemail from a woman I didn't recognize. Why did you send flowers to my parents? She demanded, panic sharp in her voice. My dad just called me thinking someone was telling him he was going to die. This isn't funny. My stomach dropped. In that moment, one truth became painfully clear. No one had died, and whatever my boyfriend had lied about was only the beginning. I met him 2 years earlier in the most ordinary way possible through a mutual friend's birthday dinner. Nothing dramatic, no sparks flying across the room. Just a quiet, steady conversation that lingered longer than it should have. He sat across from me, sleeves rolled up, listening more than he spoke. When he smiled, it wasn't performative, it was soft, like he was letting you in on something private. By the end of the night, I realized I'd spent most of the dinner angled toward him without noticing. He texted me the next day. I liked talking to you. Want to grab coffee? That was how it started. Coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into long dinners where time disappeared. He wasn't flashy. He was consistent. He remembered things, how I took my tea, which songs made me quiet, the way I needed space when I was overwhelmed instead of reassurance. After dating men who thrived on chaos, his steadiness felt like safety. He told me about his ex early on, a college relationship, 3 years together. They'd broken up years before we met. According to him, it was mutual. They'd grown apart, different paths, no lingering drama. She was a big part of my life once, he said, eyes steady. But that chapter's closed. I believed him. She existed in the background in small, dismissible ways. An occasional Instagram comment. A name that came up in passing when he talked about old friends. Nothing that felt threatening. I told myself that maturity meant not being bothered by history. We moved in together after a year and a half. It felt like the natural next step. We argued about practical things, where to put the couch, whether the kitchen needed another shelf, but never about trust. Trust was the foundation we stood on, or so I thought. Living together made me feel chosen. He came home to me, slept beside me, built routines with me, Sunday grocery runs, shared playlists, quiet nights where we cooked and talked about nothing and everything. I felt secure in a way I hadn't before. There were moments, though, small ones, that didn't quite fit. He was protective of his phone, always angled away. Not aggressively secretive, just careful. If her name came up, he'd brush past it quickly, like stepping over a crack in the sidewalk. I noticed, but I didn't push. I wanted to be the woman who trusted without policing, the woman who didn't confuse intuition with insecurity. His family liked me. His mother called me sweetheart. His father shook my hand and told me he was glad his son had found someone grounded. They talked about the future in vague, hopeful terms. Nothing official, just implications. 2 years together, 6 months living side by side. I thought we were building something real. That night, the night of the text, I replayed all of this in my head. Every memory reframed under a harsher light. Every moment I dismissed as harmless suddenly felt heavier. I realized how much of our stability relied on the version of him he showed me. The supportive boyfriend, the honest partner, the man who said he hated drama. Standing alone in our apartment, phone buzzing in my hand, I understood something I hadn't before. You don't see betrayal coming like a crash. You feel it like a quiet shift, like the ground moving half an inch beneath your feet, just enough to make you lose your balance. And that night, my balance was already gone. After the voicemail, I didn't call my boyfriend right away. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, listening to my own breathing. Slow in, slower out. I needed facts before emotions. I needed to be sure I wasn't misreading something and turning it into a catastrophe. I texted him instead. I sent flowers to your ex's family. Her parents were confused. Can you explain? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I stared at the screen, my thoughts circling the same question. How does someone confuse a dead father with a living one? Finally, a message came through. I need to call you. I'm at work. Text is fine, I replied. Another pause, longer this time. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That word felt too small for the weight in my chest. What kind of misunderstanding leads to someone thinking a parent died? No response. When he finally called, his voice was shaky in a way I'd never heard before. Hey, he said. So, there's been a weird mix-up. I didn't answer right away. Silence can be louder than shouting. I must have gotten confused, he continued quickly. It wasn't her dad, it was her uncle. Her great-uncle, actually. He lives in another state. I mixed it up. I closed my eyes. A great-uncle, I repeated, who lives somewhere else. Yes, he said, but she was really close to him. What was his name? What? The great-uncle, I said calmly. What was his name? The line went quiet. I could hear his breath on the other end. Then, Robert! Okay, I said. Then I'll send flowers to that funeral too. Which funeral home is handling it? No, he said too fast. That's not necessary. It's respectful, I replied. Which funeral home? The call ended. He hung up on me. Something in me shifted then. Not anger, not yet. Just clarity. A clean, sharp understanding that the story was collapsing under its own weight. I left work early. When I got home, he was already there, pacing the living room, running a hand through his hair. He looked relieved and terrified all at once. We need to talk, he said. Yes, I replied, we do. He exhaled hard. I wasn't at her house. No kidding. I was at a friend's bachelorette party. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A short, incredulous sound that surprised both of us. Your friend got married 2 years ago, I said. I was at her wedding. His face flushed red. Different friend, he snapped. Different woman. What's her last name? You don't know her. Try me. His composure shattered. His shoulders dropped. His eyes filled with tears. Why are you interrogating me? He cried. You're being controlling. Controlling? I said quietly. You told me someone died. I panicked, he said. I knew you'd react badly if I told you the truth. The truth being, he swallowed. I was seeing my ex. There it was. Finally, the first real crack. So you were with her. It's not what you think, he rushed. We were just catching up. Talking. I didn't want to make it weird. You made up a death, I said. My hands were shaking now. That's not avoiding awkwardness. That's disturbing. I didn't mean for it to get this far, but it already had. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't the full truth. Just the first lie he'd been forced to drop. I told him to leave. Not dramatically, not screaming, just a flat sentence that surprised even me. I need you to go. He blinked like he hadn't heard me correctly. What? You heard me, I said. My voice was steady, even though my hands were trembling. Pack your things and go. He stared at me, then laughed nervously. Come on, you're really ending our relationship over this? This? I repeated. You lied about someone dying. You manipulated my empathy, and you were at your ex's house behind my back. It was a white lie, he insisted. I panicked. You fabricated a death, I said. That's not a white lie. That's unhinged. He ran his hands over his face. You're overreacting. That word snapped something inside me. I trusted you, I said quietly. I defended you in my own head before you even asked. And you stood there and watched me mourn a person who was never dead. He opened his mouth to argue, but I stood up. We're done. For a moment, he looked genuinely stunned. Then his expression shifted, hurt giving way to indignation. So that's it? 2 years gone? Yes. He grabbed a duffel bag, stuffing clothes into it haphazardly, still talking the entire time. "You always do this," he said. "You take things too seriously. You can't just let things go." "You can't let things go," I replied. "You had to lie. You had to hide. You had to rewrite reality instead of telling the truth." He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the walls. That night, my phone didn't stop vibrating. Text after text, call after call. "I'm sorry. You're being dramatic. This didn't mean anything. She understands me better than you. Please don't do this. You're throwing everything away. I love you." 82 messages. I didn't respond to a single one. The next day, the entitlement escalated. He moved back in with his mother. I found that out because she started calling me. Over and over. 12 voicemails in one afternoon. "Sweetheart," she said in one, her voice thick with forced calm, "you're throwing away something beautiful over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Then came the message that changed everything. A woman I didn't know messaged me on Instagram. "Hi, this is awkward, but I think we need to talk. I'm his girlfriend." My stomach dropped. Girlfriend. Her name was Haley. She'd been dating him for 8 months. 8 months, meaning most of the time we'd been living together. She explained that she'd seen my name pop up repeatedly in his phone while he was panicking about the flowers. She'd asked questions. He'd lied. Then she'd found the truth herself. We met for coffee the next day. She showed me screenshots, dozens of them. Messages where he told her I was basically single, that we were just roommates, that I was emotionally unavailable. According to him, he'd been going to his ex's house for closure conversations for months, always when Haley was at work. The night of the fake death, they'd slept together. She slid one last photo across the table. It was him, his bed, and my bracelet, the one I'd given him for our anniversary, on his wrist. I felt sick. Haley broke up with him immediately. Before she blocked him, she forwarded me everything. Every message, every lie, every piece of proof. I sent it all to him with one sentence. "Your mom can stop calling me now." His reply came instantly. "You had no right to share my private information with strangers. That's revenge porn. I'm calling the police." I stared at the screen, stunned by the audacity. "You were fully clothed," I replied. "And Haley isn't a stranger. She's the other woman you were betraying." That was when I understood something chilling. He wasn't sorry. He was angry he'd been exposed. And he wasn't done yet. The moment the truth settled in, I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't collapse the way movies say you're supposed to when your life detonates. I went numb. It was like my body had decided feeling everything at once would kill me. So it shut the doors and let the shock do its job. I moved through the apartment on autopilot, picking up his things one by one, a charger, a hoodie, a mug he liked because it kept coffee hot longer. Each item felt heavier than it should have. I kept replaying Haley's words in my head. 8 months. Basically roommates. Emotionally unavailable. We'd had sex the morning before the fake death text. That detail sat in my chest like a stone. I wondered how many times he'd kissed me after lying to her, how many nights he'd come home smelling like someone else, and I'd chalked it up to work stress or traffic or nothing at all. I didn't block him right away, not because I wanted to hear from him, but because I wanted to document everything. The messages kept coming. "You're ruining my life. You're twisting things to make me look bad. You're pathetic for involving her. She means nothing compared to you." My hands shook as I scrolled. The whiplash was dizzying. Apologies morphed into insults in seconds. Love declarations dissolved into threats. Then he showed up at my work. I was in the middle of lunch when my phone buzzed. A coworker leaned over and whispered, "There's a man asking for you at reception. He looks upset." My heart started racing before I even stood up. By the time I reached the lobby, he was already raising his voice. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. "You're turning everyone against me." I froze. People were staring. Security was moving closer. "I chose you for stability," he yelled. "She just made me feel alive." The words sliced clean through me. Security escorted him out as he continued shouting about how I was destroying his future. Someone nearby pulled out their phone and started recording. My boss told me to take the rest of the day off and gently suggested I file a restraining order. That night, it got worse. His mother showed up at my apartment. She brought his father. And him. They stood in the hallway like they were staging an intervention. "Relationships require forgiveness," his father said, folding his arms. "We're not in a relationship," I replied. "He cheated on me for months." "It wasn't cheating," my ex cut in. "We were just talking." Haley's screenshots burned in my mind. "Talking doesn't usually happen in bed," I said. His mother tried a new tactic. "He's been struggling with depression," she said softly. "This isn't really him." He nodded eagerly. "I'm sick. I need help, not abandonment." "Then get help," I said, "but not from me." His father's tone hardened. You're going to throw away 2 years over some texts? Be a woman. Forgive. A cold calm settled over me. A woman doesn't stay with a man who lies about deaths, cheats, and then blames her for reacting, I said. Please leave. They refused. I called the police. When the officers arrived, my ex claimed I was holding his belongings hostage. I showed them our text history, where he admitted he'd taken everything when he left. The officers told them to leave or face trespassing charges. As they walked away, his mother turned back and spat, You'll regret this when you're alone forever. He added, No one else will put up with you anyway. The door closed behind them. I locked it. Then I slid down against it and finally cried. Not because I missed him, but because I realized how close I'd come to believing his version of reality, and how much harder he was about to fight now that he'd lost control of the story. I thought calling the police would end it. I thought public exposure, security escorting him out of my workplace, officers telling his family to leave, would finally make him retreat. I underestimated how dangerous entitlement becomes when it's cornered. The next morning, my phone was already buzzing before I opened my eyes. A message from someone I didn't expect. Hey, I don't know how to say this, but I think you should know what he's been telling people. It was his best friend. According to him, my ex had been laying groundwork for months, telling everyone we were basically roommates, that I hadn't touched him in half a year, that I was cold, controlling, emotionally unavailable. He'd even told people he thought I might be gay. I laughed when I read that, a short, hollow sound. We'd slept together the morning before the fake death text. But reality didn't matter anymore. Narrative did. Later that day, his posts started appearing on social media. Long, carefully worded captions about finding the courage to leave a loveless relationship. Quotes about emotional abuse. About being trapped with someone who slowly kills your soul. He never named me. He didn't have to. We shared friends, colleagues, acquaintances. Everyone knew exactly who he meant. Then came the photo. Him and his ex, smiling, arms around each other. The caption read, When you finally find your person after years of settling. The comments filled instantly. So proud of you. You deserve real love. Healing looks good on you. Someone even mentioned throwing him a freedom party. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself publicly. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and started building a timeline. Not emotionally, logically. I gathered screenshots. His text saying he loved me the day before the fake death. Messages where he admitted lying about someone dying. Proof he'd been at his ex's house. Screenshots from Haley showing months of overlap. The photo from his bed. Security footage from my workplace. The police report from the night his family showed up uninvited. I sent the folder privately to 5 people. 5 mutual friends who had been commenting supportively on his posts. Within hours, the tone shifted. Comments disappeared. The freedom party was quietly canceled. People started asking him uncomfortable questions. He doubled down. He posted that I was weaponizing his trauma, that I was turning people against a victim, that I was cruel and vindictive. That night, he called me at 2 a.m. He was sobbing. Are you happy now? He demanded. You ruined everything. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. You lied. You cheated. You're facing consequences. She was my soulmate, he cried. She left because of you. Your soulmate dumped you after a week, I replied. That's not on me. You made this public. I told the truth privately, I said, to 5 people. You're evil, he spat. I'm going to destroy you. Good luck, I said, and hung up. The next day he tried. He called my employer and accused me of harassing him. HR called me in. I brought receipts, texts, screenshots, security footage of him screaming in the lobby, the police report. They banned him from the property and offered me access to their legal team if things escalated further. Then he contacted my landlord, claimed I was dealing drugs out of the apartment. My landlord laughed. I've known you for years, he said. You're in bed by 10. Then he called my mother, told her I was unstable, that I needed intervention. My mother didn't hesitate. The only unstable person here is someone who lies about deaths, she said. Lose my number. But the peak came in the mail. A formal letter, printed, typed, 6 bullet points labeled Terms for Reconciliation. I was supposed to publicly apologize, delete all evidence, pay for couples therapy, apologize to his ex for the flowers, let him move back in immediately, pretend nothing happened. At the bottom, you have 48 hours to accept these terms, or I'll have no choice but to move on permanently. I stared at it for a long time. Then I framed it, hung it in my kitchen. Because if there was ever proof that this wasn't about love or grief or misunderstanding, this was it. And somehow, even then, he still thought he was in control. The night after I framed his terms for reconciliation, the apartment felt hollow in a way it hadn't before. Not quiet, hollow. Every sound echoed too long. The refrigerator hum, the click of the thermostat, my own footsteps moving from room to room like I was walking through someone else's life. That was the night it finally hit me. Not the betrayal. I'd processed that. Not the lies. I'd cataloged those. It was the realization that if I hadn't caught him, if I hadn't checked the obituaries, if I hadn't sent the flowers, this would have continued. For months, maybe years. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank television screen, and imagined the version of myself who never questioned him. The woman who trusted harder, who swallowed discomfort and called it maturity. That woman would have married him. She would have defended him to friends, to family, to herself. She would have slowly learned to doubt her instincts until there was nothing left but confusion. My chest tightened. That's when the shaking started. Not dramatic sobbing, just my hands trembling uncontrollably, like my body was finally releasing everything my mind had been holding back. I pressed my palms together, tried to steady them, and failed. I thought about the bracelet in that photo, the bed I'd slept in, the lies told with such ease. And for the first time since all of this began, I wondered if he was right about one thing. What if I really was boring? The thought slipped in quietly, like it belonged there, like it had always been waiting. What if my calm was dullness? What if my trust was naivete? What if my boundaries made me unlovable? I hated myself for even thinking it, but doubt has a way of disguising itself as self-reflection. I checked my phone. A message from an unknown number. You didn't have to destroy him like this. Another followed. You could have handled this privately. Then another. He's not doing well. If something happens, that's on you. My throat closed. This was the moment he'd been aiming for all along. The pivot from aggressor to victim. From liar to wounded man undone by a cruel woman who couldn't let things go. I curled in on myself on the couch, pulling my knees to my chest. For a few minutes, I let the weight of it crush me. The isolation. The fear that somehow, despite everything, I would be blamed. I thought about all the times I'd apologized first in past relationships, all the times I'd softened my boundaries to keep the peace. And then something inside me hardened instead. I opened my laptop again, not to gather evidence, not to respond, not to defend myself, but to look at the timeline I'd created. Every lie, every overlap, every escalation. Seeing it laid out like that, clean, factual, undeniable, snapped me back into my body. This wasn't confusion. This was pattern. And patterns don't change because you love someone harder. I closed the laptop and stood up, my legs unsteady but my mind clearer than it had been in days. I wasn't going to beg for my own reality anymore. I wasn't going to explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. If this was the lowest point, alone, shaking, questioning myself, then the only way forward was up. And the next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be decisive. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting or tears. It arrived with clarity. I woke up the next morning and realized something had shifted. The fear was gone. The constant knot in my stomach had loosened. For the first time since everything exploded, I wasn't bracing myself for the next message, the next accusation, the next attempt to rewrite reality. I stopped reacting. I stopped answering immediately. I stopped explaining. I stopped trying to sound reasonable to someone who had no interest in reason. Instead, I made one deliberate decision. I would let facts speak. Not publicly, not emotionally, not defensively. Precisely. I opened the folder on my laptop, the one I'd been adding to without even realizing it was becoming something bigger. A timeline. Clean. Chronological. Impossible to argue with. Screenshots of him telling me he loved me the day before the fake death text. His own messages admitting he lied about someone dying. Proof he was at his ex's house. Messages he sent Haley claiming I was basically single and emotionally unavailable. The photo from his bed, security footage from my workplace, the police report from the night his family refused to leave my apartment. No commentary, no insults, no emotional language, just evidence. I sent it privately to 5 people, the same mutual friends who had been openly supporting his version of events online. I wrote one sentence. I'm not asking you to choose sides, I just won't be silent while lies are told about me. That was it. I didn't refresh, I didn't wait by my phone. But within hours, I saw the shift. Comments vanished. Praise turned into silence. Invitations quietly disappeared. The Freedom Party people had been planning for him was canceled without explanation. And then came the moment he didn't expect. His ex left him. Not dramatically, not emotionally, She sent him a short message and walked away. This is too much drama. You told me you were single. I don't want to be involved in this mess. He called me after that. His voice wasn't shaky, it wasn't broken. It was tight, controlled, angry. You're satisfied now? He said. You got what you wanted. I didn't want anything, I replied evenly. I wanted the truth to stop being twisted. She only left because you exposed things. I didn't expose anything publicly, I said. I corrected lies privately. You destroyed my life over one lie. One lie doesn't require this much damage control, I answered. This was months of deception. There was a pause, not grief, but calculation. Then he said quietly, You didn't have to go this far. And that was the moment I understood fully. He didn't regret what he did. He regretted losing control of the story. I hung up without another word. That silence, my silence, was the turning point. Because from that moment on, everything he tried to do only proved what I already knew. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I wasn't overreacting. I was simply no longer participating in someone else's lie. And once the truth was placed on the table, I didn't need to fight for power anymore. I already had it. The fallout was not dramatic. It was humiliating. Once the truth settled into the spaces he could no longer control, his world didn't explode. It collapsed inward. People stopped responding to him. Not with arguments, not with confrontation, just silence. The kind that tells you the performance is over and the audience has left. He didn't apologize. He pivoted. The first message came from one of his friends, someone who had been loud in the comments of his posts. Just so you know, he's been telling people for months that you were basically roommates, that you didn't touch him, that you were cold, emotionally unavailable. Another message followed. He told people you were controlling, that you'd get jealous if you talked to anyone. Then the most absurd one. He even said he thought you might be gay. I stared at my phone, stunned, not by the cruelty, but by the strategy. This hadn't started after the breakup. He'd been laying groundwork long before I ever questioned him. That afternoon, I saw it unfold in real time. He posted again. Long paragraphs about emotional abuse, about being trapped in a relationship where he was slowly losing himself, about finally choosing happiness. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. Then he posted a photo, him and his ex smiling close. The caption read, When you finally find your person after years of settling. The comments poured in. You deserve this. So proud of you for choosing yourself. Healing looks good on you. Someone even suggested throwing him a freedom party. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself publicly. Instead, I sent the timeline. Privately, quietly, only to the people who mattered. And within hours, the tone shifted. Comments disappeared. Supportive replies turned cautious. The freedom party was quietly canceled. He noticed. That night, he called me. His voice wasn't emotional. It was sharp, controlled, defensive. She left, he said. I said nothing. My ex, he clarified. She dumped me. No apology, no accountability. Just an accusation hanging in the air. She said it was too much drama, he continued bitterly. Said I lied about being single. Said she didn't want to deal with this mess. I exhaled slowly. You lied, I said. This is what happens. She only left because you made this public. I didn't, I replied. I told the truth, privately. You destroyed my life over one lie. One lie doesn't require this much damage control, I said calmly. This was months of manipulation. He went quiet, not in sadness, but in calculation. Then came the next move. The next day, HR called me in. He had contacted my employer, claiming I was harassing him and ruining his reputation. I brought the folder. The same evidence, the same screenshots, the same security footage of him screaming in the lobby, the same police report from the night his family showed up uninvited. They reviewed everything. Then they banned him from the property, permanently. They also offered me access to their legal team if he escalated further. That evening, my landlord called. He reached out, he said, clearly amused. Claimed you're dealing drugs. I laughed for the first time in days. Then he contacted my family. He called my mother and told her I was mentally unstable, vindictive, needed intervention. My mother didn't hesitate. The only unstable person here, she said, is someone who lies about deaths. The final act of entitlement arrived by mail. A printed letter. Formal, structured, delusional. 6 demands. I was to publicly apologize for overreacting, delete all evidence of his mistake, pay for couples therapy, apologize to his ex for the flowers, let him move back in immediately, pretend none of this ever happened. At the bottom, you have 48 hours to accept these terms, or I'll move on permanently. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, not hurt, just stunned by the audacity. I framed the letter and hung it in my kitchen, not as a joke, as proof. Because this wasn't a man spiraling emotionally. This was a man furious that consequences had finally arrived. And for the first time, none of it was landing on me anymore. When the noise finally died down, what surprised me most was how quiet my life became. Not empty, peaceful. There were no more late-night accusations, no frantic messages demanding reassurance, no attempts to rewrite what had already been proven. The silence wasn't punishment, it was relief. Weeks later, I ran into someone new at my climbing gym. Nothing dramatic, no sparks, just easy conversation and shared laughter between sets. When I told him the story, briefly, without embellishment, he shook his head and said, "That's wild." Then he added, "Anyone who lies about death has bigger problems than heartbreak." We took things slow, deliberately, no rushing, no promises made out of fear of being alone. It felt healthy, grounded. Haley and I stayed in touch too. Trauma does that sometimes. It connects people in unexpected ways. We even double dated once. It wasn't awkward. It was oddly affirming. Proof that the truth doesn't poison everything it touches. As for my ex, the consequences kept unfolding without my involvement. He burned bridges faster than he could rebuild them. His family stopped intervening. Friends stopped answering. His threats lost their teeth when no one reacted. The last message he ever sent me read, "You won." I didn't reply, because this was never about winning. It was about stepping out of a lie. Here's what I learned, what I want anyone listening to understand. People who lie about something as serious as death aren't avoiding conflict. They're testing how much reality they can bend without consequence. If someone calls you controlling for asking questions, that's not love, that's deflection. If someone says you're overreacting to a lie, they're hoping you'll doubt yourself enough to stay quiet. The truth doesn't need theatrics, it doesn't need revenge, it doesn't even need an audience. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop participating in someone else's story and stand firmly in your own. I didn't destroy his life. I just refused to carry the weight of his choices anymore. And that, quietly, decisively, changed everything.